Hi, thank you so much for being here. I am Magnolia of Magnolia Nest Designs. You may know me as a traveling stitcher, which is how I've been showing up on Instagram for a few years now. I haven't decided, maybe I'll change my handle there to match Floss Dude because it wasn't available here. Maybe I won't. I can't decide. The easiest things in action when you don't know what to do. So that's what I'm doing now. But if you have any views, feel free to let me know. Today's video is all about cross stitch, and it is going to be not a regular floss tube, as you may have seen from the little button you've clicked on. This is a Cross Stitch Academy post. Cross Stitch Academy is just all about stitches, sharing with stitches the things we've learned along the way. I'm hosting it, and if anyone else wants to jump on and share their wisdom through videos, or if you'd like to share what you do in the comments, I'd absolutely love that so much. Today we're talking about all things floss. And this came about because I've hardly been stitching in the past week. It's not like me. I haven't picked up a needle and thread since last weekend, and it's Sunday afternoon, because I'm traveling later next week. I'm going to a country that has craft stores. I'm so excited. I haven't had access to craft stores for quite some time, and so that's a perfect opportunity to buy some DMC. And better than that, where I'm going, the DMC costs about a quarter as much as it does in New Zealand, where I was living for most of my life. So I'm super excited, and instead of stitching, I've been identifying what are the big charts that I want to stitch on in the next year or two. Let's be honest, I've picked like 10 years worth of charts. Hopefully I'll start them all the next year or two. They're not going to be finished in that time frame. I might get a couple of them done if I stitch on them monogamously, but not all of them. So I've figured out what they are, and I've been working on my inventory and discovering what I'll need to purchase to kit them up. I shared a post on my Instagram and asked if people might be interested in learning more about how I do that, and 68 of you said yes, which was super exciting. So that's what I'm talking about today, but I'm actually going to step back and talk about all things floss. So how do I decide what type of floss to use? How do I prepare skeins? How do I choose which storage options I use, the pros and cons of the various methods that I have used? You can see some of them in front of you right now. How I organize my threads within those storage solutions, and then inventory management. Now, there's not going to be an enormous amount to look at because I am an off-camera floss tuber, so please bring out your stitching, something lovely to drink, maybe a snack, and let's get into it together. So the first thing is, how do I choose what kind of floss to use? I am a huge fan of DMC. I've been using it since I was a very young primary school student. And some of my DMC is actually from that era because, you know, there's colours you use more than others. I've used most of it, but I'm confident that some, like 3042, I had that for a huge project I did when I was 11 years old. It was a big full coverage that we underestimated how complex it would be. It took me a long time to finish. I don't think I've bought that one again since. So it lasts a really long time if you look after it. I love the variety of colours. I love that it is relatively inexpensive. I love that it is available most places. As I said, it's not available in the Pacific where I live. But then you know, like, you can't buy most things here, so that's hardly anything to judge it by. But so how do I decide? So I'm not against using fancy floss. I just don't tend to use it because it's quite expensive, but from time to time I will for something special. What I look for in floss is I look for the quality of the individual strands. Are they going to wear as I'm using them and become like a little bit fuzzy? Are they going to lose their sheen? All threads will if your thread length that you're using is too long, but some of the cheaper, like no brand options that you can get tend more in that direction. And some of the kits that I've used in the past have been like that as well. So in that case, I'll replace the kit floss with DMC just by colour matching. Anchor's a great thread choice as well. I don't use much anchor. There's some that I have just because like I bought it in a charity shop or something like that, or I inherited it. And I love it and I use it. I don't use it as often because the colours aren't compatible with most of the charts I use, as in like it's not charted in Anchor, but I can substitute. So what I'll usually use them for is I have let's step it back a second. I have a separate one of these containers that I use for leftover kit floss, for charity store floss, for inherited floss, for anything that it isn't DMC. So when I stitch, for example, the Mill Hill Wise Man, one of them was $5.50 and there was some $5.50 left over, and I looked at it because even with DMC it doesn't happen nearly as much as it does with fancy floss, but even with DMC there can be some difference between dye lots. So I looked at it, comparing it closely with this, laying a strand on, and I decided, okay, it looks the same. I'm comfortable that this is a close enough dye lot that I can just stitch with it with this and it won't make any difference. And so I just wrapped it on here and put it away this way. If it's kit floss where it's not DMC, sometimes they don't even tell you what brand they are, or they say it's similar to DMC but the colours aren't quite the same, then I keep them in my separate container. And what I use that for is smalls and ornaments, where I'll just draw from it to use that up, pick my own colours. I think that's quite fun. But as I said, I don't use threads that aren't going to give me a good quality result. And the best way to know if it's going to or not is just by using it. You'll figure it out quite easily, and I'm not adverse to saying no, this just isn't working for me and getting rid of it. There's a bunch of like different floss brands on Amazon that have come from large factories that don't necessarily have the same quality standards as DMC. My advice, if you're interested in going that way, and they're quite inexpensive, it might be a good option for you. I know a lot of people love CXC Black and Anchor Black over DMC 310, for instance. If you're interested in going that way, my advice would be to just get 1 or 2 skeins and try it out and figure out if it works for you, if you're happy with the quality, instead of investing in a whole colorway in something that may or may not hold up. There's so many of them that it can be quite difficult, I think, to keep track of all of the different options. But DMC is tried and trusted. People have been using it for a really long time, so it's a very safe option to use. Next, how I prepare skeins. So this is a skein of DMC, and there's 2 ways you can pull it out. There's a tail at this end and there's a tail at this end, and if you use this tail it's going to get horribly knotted. So the easy way I do it is I lay it in my hand in this direction so the number is facing me, and then I just whip these pieces off, hold from the bottom and pull. And it might not right now because I'm on camera and I've got Murphy jeans, but it should just come out flawlessly. And then generally I'll be like moving both of my arms way out. This will happen really quickly, but because I'm keeping one hand in camera, it's taking a few more pulls than usual. Now what you can do is you can go straight from this into putting this floss into whatever your storage solution is. It might be you put it on a bobbin, it might be you put it in a plastic bag, it might be you use a floss drop, or maybe you have a new storage solution that I'm not familiar with. For me, I don't do that. I like to pre-cut all of my lengths of thread, and that's for 2 reasons. I have a little knot here because I'm talking to you. That doesn't usually happen. I don't do that for 2 reasons. So the first one is that it's much faster and more convenient for me when I'm stitching to pull off a length of thread and just go for it. Also, I tend to stitch quite a lot of things that that use blends. And what a blend is, so you'll use either 2 or 3 strands of thread. It'll tell you how many, and it will be either one of one color and one of a different color, or 2 of one color and one of another color. And that gives a subtle color variation that you just can't get from just the normal colors as they come. So what I do is I fold my thread in quarters, as you're seeing me do here. So just putting the ends together and running it through my hands. And then I cut the loops at both ends. Actually, because I'm talking, I've now cut it into eighths, not quarters. Darn it. Anyway, I cut it into quarters, and so that gives me 4 2-meter lengths. And then I wrap my lengths around a bobbin. I like a 2-meter length. I'm going to be really annoyed that this is 1 meter. Why did I choose 2 meters? One is because DMC comes in 8-meter skeins. And so if you use something like a random measurement to cut your amount, you'll be left with something at the end potentially that's not quite so long. So when I first started pre-cutting my threads into lengths, I'd seen somewhere that 17 inches was the perfect length. So I started cutting them into 17 inches. It just didn't split perfectly into 8. But just folding it in quarters, I'm not having to faff around with a ruler or with anything else. I can just fold it, cut, go. And that works really well for me. Why 2 meters instead of 1? I don't like stitching with really short lengths of thread. And that's partially because, so this is a typical waist length from my Ort jar. Often they're actually a lot smaller than this. I don't have a lot left over when I finish my length of thread. I want there to be just enough to run my needle under the back and no more. So if I start with 2 meters, what I'll do is I'll take 1 thread from it. So let me show you how to separate thread, just in case you're quite new just stitching, and if you're not, please bear with me. And let's see if I tangle this because I'm on camera. So the easiest way, so when I started stitching, the way my mum taught me, because it was the way her mum taught her and the way her mum taught her, was you grab a thread and you go like this, and you can see it starts getting a little bit tangled already, and then you just kind of go like that, and that works fine. But it's not as fast or as efficient as the new method I learned when I found floss tube, which is boom, just like that. You just grab it and you pull it, and then importantly you straighten out the long length, because if you leave it, it'll be like a little bit bent up. If you leave it like that without running your hand over it like this to straighten it, and then pull another one, it will knot terribly. You just pull out a strand like that, and it's super easy. So I do that. I usually stitch with 2 strands, and if I have a 2 meter length, then I can double it up and I have 1 meter to start stitching with. To me, that's a really great length if I'm stitching on 14 count and it has a fairly open weave. At all other times it's probably a bit too long, but what I'll do is usually in the things I'm stitching there'll be like a little 4-stitch motif here, or maybe there's an eye, or just a couple of stitches in a tree, or whatever you're doing. Quite often there's somewhere where you need to start and end a thread and you've only done 3, 4, 5, 6 stitches. I'll do that with my new 2 meter doubled over to 1 meter length of thread and snip it, and then instead of having 2 short lengths of thread left, which I would have if I'd started with 1 meter length, I'll have 2 lengths that are about 1 meter long. And I find that's perfect. That's the amount I usually want to be stitching with. So starting with 2 meters means that either I can have a look and I can see, is there something little that I can do to stitch and get out of the way and shorten my thread, or do I cut it in half? Having it at 2 meters also is great for me because I stitch a lot on 28 count over 1, and I find that 1 meter is just too much for that, because by the time I'm 3/4 of the way through, it's starting to lose some of its sheen. So when I'm stitching 28 count over 1, I want to take my 2 meter length of thread, and I want to cut it in thirds, and I find that third is the right length. And I'm slowing down now because I feel like I'm probably confusing people. I'm sorry if I am. I don't know how to explain it more clearly, and I think if I try, I'll probably get us all in a bigger muddle. So suffice it to say, pick your length you want to pre-cut to if you want to pre-cut, and stick with that. I like pre-cutting because it means if I'm taking something off a bobbin, for instance, I'm winding off a certain amount. For me, it's 2 meters, and that's the same amount no matter what. It's really helpful for me because I stitch a lot with I probably should be doing this on a Sunday afternoon after spending my whole weekend doing numbers. Sorry. I stitch a lot of charts that have blends, and so if you don't pre-cut, if you don't have everything the same length, you'll find out you've got weird lengths you're juggling with from both sides. Whereas for me, I'll pull the same length of thread off this bobbin as I will of any of the other bobbins, so I can really easily, quickly, effortlessly match them together and just get stitching. I love organization. I love the process of putting all of this together, but there's times when I'm in the mood to do this, and there's times that I'm in the mood to stitch, and when I want to stitch, I just want to stitch. So all of my organization methods are based on how to make things as quick, seamless and effortless as possible when I'm getting to stitching. And for me, preparing my skeins in that way does that for me. Storage options. I'm sorry if that was tough going, guys. Storage options. I use 3 different storage options. You can see them all in front of you here. I use plastic bags. These aren't, I think some people use, what are they called, floss away bags. These are just small Ziploc bags that do the same thing. They don't have a hole punched to put them all together on a ring, but you could easily do that with just a normal hole punch. I use floss drops, and I use bobbins. We're going to talk briefly about all 3 options and what I see as the pros and cons of each. And I'll talk about how I use them. How you use them might be different, but I think the pros and cons might be similar between stitches. So hopefully you'll get some value from that. So floss bags. The values that I see in using these is they're quite fast to set up. So here at the bottom I have the bulk of my thread that I've just cut. So because I cut it into 2 meter lengths, I'll have 3 lengths that are 2 meters that I'll just fold up and I'll stick in the bottom, and then I'll have 1 length that I'll use to start stitching. So this is 5 strands of that, and then this is the strand that I've started using, and I do it in this order because then I know I just open this and I pull out this bit and I'm ready to go and start stitching. Then when I finish that, this is my length that's got multiple strands left. I'll take one of those strands and I'll get stitching. When that's gone, then I move to the body. I find that to be quite efficient. I just keep the DMC card here, as you can see, and I also like that it's inherently a safe way to keep your floss. Out of all of the options that I use, this is the one where if something happens, like someone spills food or drink or something on your stitching, if it's in these bags and it's sealed, and I always seal it as soon as I've taken the floss out, no worries. So that could be a really good option for you. How I use this, so I travel a lot. don't even want to begin to count how often I travel. And when I am away, sometimes I'll start a new project that I haven't planned on starting. So I'll buy the new skein of thread, and I'll just pop it in here and away I go. It's super quick, super efficient. I'm not having to travel with like blank bobbins or blank, what are these called? You know what they're called. My words are failing me. To label and go. I can just have a bunch of plastic bags that are multi-purpose. I could use them for something else if I want. Chuck them in a bag and away I go. Some people use these as their main solution. I don't, and that's because I have a lot of different colours of thread, as you can see, and there's more that's out of camera. And to me, this takes up quite a bit of space when you have them all together, and it's not as efficient to look through to find your colours as the other options. So for me, this is just a convenient travel option. My main way that I store my floss is absolutely through bobbins. Now this is partially because my mum used bobbins, and so I was raised using bobbins, and so maybe if I'd come at this craft without that history, maybe it would be a little bit different. But bobbins really work for me. The things that I like about them is I can have my floss at any length to start with. That's also an advantage of these bags. But with floss drops, if you have a 2 meter length of floss on your floss drop, it's going to be an absolute pain. They're going to get tangled. It's just not fun. And I have 2 meters on one of these, and I hate it. And so this gives me more, the bobbins give me more options in terms of having a comfortable length for me to start with. The other thing that I like about bobbins is they're always tidy. So when I finish using a small length of thread, this isn't a great option because I don't have one on here, I'll just wrap it back on. And so quite often, that's also not a good example, most of these will be like that. Maybe this one. There we go. So this is a small length that I've just been stitching with, and I've just rolled it back on as I went, and it's super tidy. I could chuck these in a bag and they would still be tidy. And I like that I can label them with the color name. So I have the number twice because I was just a little bit nervous when I did it that some of them might rub off, and so by having it twice, it's basically just an insurance method. And then I just wrote out the DMC color name, which I love. I find that super helpful when I'm designing, and it's helping me get a greater appreciation for color, I think, seeing the name of the color every time I pull one out. Of course, you could write the full names on your floss drops too, which is probably what I'm going to start doing. But I love that on the bobbin. So the small amount of space they take up, how tidy they are, that you can have any length of thread on them without it being inconvenient. And I love that I can just lay this out like this, and I can just grab a color. To me, this storage solution using bobbins is the fastest way to find any color you want out of all of them. Now, I say that as a stitcher who doesn't kit up individual projects. I'm about to kit up a floss individually for some BAPs that I'm going to be starting that I know are going to take me multiple years, and I don't want to mix dye lots in them because they're projects where they have big blocks of color, and so that would be noticeable. So I'm breaking my own rules for that. But generally, I'll use perhaps 3072. I could be using this for 3 or 4 projects at the same time. I only have a master set. I don't have separate kitting up. And so that means I'm not ever going, I don't know where my floss is, I have to find it. And so it also means that having a way where I can easily find the colour I need is more important to me than it might be if I kitted up my projects individually. If you kit up your projects individually, which a lot of people do using floss drops, then the need to have a system where you can easily find your colour, I find is I consider that to be less important, because you're only going to be looking at maybe 20 or 30 colours on a ring. You're not going to be looking at a couple of hundred colours looking for the one you want. So that might really work for you, but that's why I love bobbins. Floss drops. Now I say I don't kit up projects. This is the colours that I've used for Spring in England and Spring in Wales that I've recently released, and I kitted them up because I wanted to see it all together, and because I wanted to be able to use it for pretty photos. And you can see how tidy this is, because each one of these is a 2 meter length of thread, which I've doubled over at the end because I'm not going to be pulling them out and using them. It's just for aesthetics. But if I was using them, I'd do it exactly like this. I just cut it at the bottom. But as I say, I'm not stitching from it. Occasionally I do cut up a project. And when I do, it's travel stitching. And I use floss drops for it, and you can see, to me this is a bit messy because I've got all these leftover pieces. So I've got maybe 15 centimeters left of this thread and I want to use it, so I've just tied it back in. There's lots of short lengths like that. To me this is less tidy and it makes my soul less happy. Than the bobbins. But there are things I love about floss drops. One thing that I love about it is that it's so much easier to start your length of thread. So with a bobbin, if you're wanting to start your length of thread, you have to take your bobbin out, you have to unwind it, then you pull out your one strand, and then you rewind this back on and put it back away. That takes several steps. With a floss drop, you just literally stick your needle through one strand and pull. I'm not going to do it on this because, as I say, I've got them doubled up at the end, but that's super easy. It takes only a couple of seconds and I love the efficiency in that. I also love, as someone who designs sometimes, but even when I'm not, I'm a person who loves changing colours in the things that I stitch. I don't do it deliberately going, I don't want to stitch something the same as anyone else, but there are colours that I love and that I want to see in my home, and I love incorporating them into things that I do. I find that with the floss drops, you just get a greater surface area of thread than you do with the bobbins. So if you're looking at colours and you're comparing colours with bobbins, you've got a great big beautiful saturated block of colour, which is super helpful and efficient. But with the floss drops, you can wind them together like this and look at them very intimately by winding them together, which I find gives me a better appreciation for precisely how the colours will play together than the floss drops do. Than the bobbins do. So to me that is an advantage of it. And I'm seriously considering, because I'm loving designing charts right now, and maybe in saying this, and maybe if I do change my storage solution, I'll go back to the year or so that I didn't decide anything and jinx myself. But I'm actually seriously considering moving 2 floss drops from bobbins because of how nicely the colours play, how easily it is to compare colours together and to decide which ones you want off the basis of that. I'm going to do it slowly because there's every possibility that the threads getting tangled will drive me insane. But I think it could be a winner. So in summary, for the storage options, if you're looking primarily for something that will take up not much storage space, I think bobbins are the way to go. If you're looking for something that's super transportable as a complete unit, so you're wanting to take your full inventory, I think bobbins are the way to go. If you're looking for something that's very transportable for an individual project, I find floss drops to be by far the best, particularly like if I'm stitching on a plane or a train or in a car, the ability to just whip out one thread with a needle, ka-ching, without having to unwind, rewind, possibly drop something, I find to be absolutely brilliant. So travel stitching, I go with floss drops. If you're looking for something that will be very tidy, I would use bobbins. If you're looking for something that is very fast to set up, so almost no investment time in beginning your length of thread, I would use these bags, because literally all you have to do is shove everything in the bag, squish the air out and close it. With any of these other solutions, you have to write the number on it or cut the label and tape the number on it, which may or may not be something you feel like doing in that moment. If you're looking for something where you can see the colours really nicely together and play with them and get creative with changing up the colours in charts or designing your own charts, I think floss drops are a really great option. And I think bobbins work really well also because while, as I've just said, floss drops have a number of advantages, with the bobbins you do get this concentrated block of colour, and when you're laying them out like that, that is still quite helpful, particularly when you're using the black and white setting on your phone to look at the colour scale and the different values of the colours, and I find bobbins to be absolutely fantastic for that. This would be the worst solution for that because there's always going to be a little bit of glare, even if you're not in bright window light, which I am. I think that's all I wanted to say about that. I hope that's given you a few things to think of, or validated some thoughts that you already had. Next up is how I organize it. Now, some people organize, goodness, I've seen so many different ways. I can't even begin to summarize them. I originally organized my flosses in number order, which you can see here, and then I went through a big phase for probably a year and a half where I had them organized in color order using the DMC color card, and I loved that. That was my first creativity era in changing colors myself and getting confident in doing that. It wasn't something I ever felt like I could do very well before when it was organized as you see here, but when I had it in color order, it was very easy for me to see. As you can see, pardon me, you can see here these three are all in a color family. They're not usually grouped like that in DMC. These are pistachio greens, and there's probably one missing here. in terms of the color family. You can look at it and you can easily go, I want to lighten it, I want to darken it. You can compare it with the other green palettes, and it's just, I find it's a lot easier and less daunting than looking at all of these colors together in the way that they are in number order, where a lot of them just don't make sense in terms of where they were placed. This is another great example of these yellows and golds are all one color family together. I loved that and I got so much value from it, but I reached the point where it was frustrating me because I couldn't just put my hand on the color immediately. I had to look first at the color guide and figure out where it should be and then pick it up, and yeah, it just slowed me down. And as I said, when I'm stitching, I don't want to be slow. I want to just be actually making crosses and not doing any of the steps in between. Like if someone could cut my thread and preload my needle for me, I might not say no. So I moved away from that to go in this direction. I'm now thinking maybe I'll put it back the other way. I'm not sure. One of the things that I love about all of our creative storage options for our craft is nothing is fixed. So if you're setting up a system for the first time and you're worrying, how do I do it? Do I do it this way? Do it that way? My advice would be just stop thinking about it. Pick a way anyway. It genuinely doesn't matter what way it is, and use it. And you will find out if it works for you or if not. And if not, try a different way and keep doing that until you find the way that works best for you. But also stay open-minded that what works best for you now may not work best for you in the future. And this is case in point. Doing a number order worked best for me, and then doing it in color order worked best. And now doing it in number order works best. And now I'm wondering, maybe I will go back to doing color order again. I don't know. I'll probably keep changing. I'm hoping to stitch for another 50-60 years. I'll probably keep changing the way I do it constantly throughout that time, and as someone who finds joy in organizing things, I'm totally comfortable with that. If you're not that kind of person, then when you find a system that works for you, you can stick with it. Inventory management. Please excuse the glare. I'm gonna use this to look at for myself, but I'll probably, it's a low light kind of day, I'll probably insert a picture of this so that you can see what I'm talking about. I use a Excel spreadsheet, which can fancily be called a database, an Excel spreadsheet, to organize my floss. So I have in the first column all of the DMC color names, and that felt like it took a really long time to type them all in. Then in the next column, I have how many skeins in each color are partial. So that will be, I've started a bobbin, or generally, so I don't kit up whole skeins of floss on floss drops. I'll take off a couple of strands, whatever I need for the travel piece that I'm working on, and keep the rest here. But a floss away bag, I might have started something and shoved it in there and then never gotten around to putting it on the bobbin. So there might be perhaps two things there, perhaps just one. So partial skeins and bobbins, and then full skeins, and some of them, like Blanc, you can see I have quite a few. Some of them I have no spares at all, and I have them all stored in a drawer, and I have them in bags per 100, and then those are in bags per 500, all with a label on it, so I can very quickly put my hand on whatever color I want. Still takes a bit of time to search through though. So the advantage to me for having this system is, number one, I can really quickly and easily just grab whatever I need when I'm like at the shop, I'll know if I need another colour, or if there's a multi-buy deal, and I've got 8 skeins I need to buy, but you get 10 to get a discount. I can say, well, these are these 2 that I don't own, so I'll get those ones. Or here's some that I use frequently, like for Peru School or Santa's, I'll get another 1 or 2 of those. And I find it much faster to go here first and have a look and see, do I have that skein, do I need it, rather than going, sorry, do I have it, rather than rifling through the bag in the first instance. My next column is to buy, and that's because I'm going on a shopping trip, as I said. So what I've done, sorry, I'll slow up. What I'll usually use this list for to buy is, so for example, the winter sampler that I'm stitching right now, I didn't have one of the colours, so I put it in here. I might know I'm going to start something soon and I don't have one of the colours, so I'll put it in here. So if I'm ever placing an order or in a store, I can just very quickly look at that list. I'm not having to keep it in lots of different places, slips of paper, my day planner, anything like that. It's all in one place with the rest of my inventory. What I've done for kitting up is I've put along the top all of the different charts that I'm thinking of stitching in the next little while. And then I've entered for all of them. So Teresa Koget Gather needs 1 skein of 22, so I put 1. It said 1. And I've put a note here that that's what I'd need to stitch 1 over 1 on 18 count. If I stitch it on a different count, I might need more. Heaven and Nature Sing by Kathy Barrick, I've got enough to do 2 over 1 on 18 count, because that's how I think I want to stitch it again. If I stitch differently, I might need more. And I've just gone through each one, and you'll see for some of them that's quite precise measurements. Those are Haydes, and they told me exactly how much was needed in terms of meterage. For some of them, I've estimated maybe half a skein for that. For others, for larger ones like Teresa Koget, Kathy Barrick, if it said it needed a skein and didn't have a specific measurement, then I've just purchased, I've just recorded that I need to purchase a skein. For these ones, I've estimated how many skeins it will take to do that. And then coming back across, I've just used the sum function to work out how many I need total. So for all of these charts that I want to stitch, how many skeins will I need? And then I've gone through manually and worked out how many I should buy. So let's find a easier section to do this with. Here's one. So I need 1 skein of 702, and I have a partial skein. Looking at the chart I'm using it for, I'm probably not going to use a whole skein. I'm definitely not going to use more than 1, so I don't need to worry about dye lots. So just using what I already have is fine. Same for that one. When I look at this one here, 729, I need 1.7 skeins and I already have 5, so that's fine. When I look at 730, I need 2.7 skeins. I have 2 started and 1 partial, but I've decided to buy 2 because Woman in a Field of Flowers, which is a large full coverage piece, needs 2.2. I'm going to just get 2 because I am trying to do this economically, and then I'll have a really close look at them and I'll see if they are the same. It looks like it could be like an identical dye lot, in which case I'll just stitch them normally and take 1 because these were recently purchased. I'll take one from there to be the 0.2, and I'll use the 2 new skeins, and I'll just cut them up together on a floss drop and mix them in. And if they're close enough, I'm comfortable with that. If not, I'll just buy some more. And that's the way I've done it the whole way through. And I found it quite satisfying to do. The total number is quite scary. I have to buy 226 skeins to kit up all these projects, but then I'll have enough that I shouldn't need to buy any more for a really long time. And as I think I said earlier, where I'm going, the skeins cost, I think, less than a quarter of what they do in New Zealand, which is where I generally buy my DMC. So I'm really comfortable with investing a lot there to save a lot over time. I'd rather get 226 skeins for my money than getting 55 for the same price. You know what I mean? So that's partially why I'm taking this approach. Also, it means that I'll have them and I can start these at any time, and I don't need to feel limited in my stitching choices because I don't have options. When I finish a skein of thread, I will go to this chart right away. If I put it off, then this will no longer be perfectly accurate, and I want it to be perfectly accurate. I'll go to it right away and I'll say, so like 9:18, I finished. Do I have a full skein left that's unstarted? Yes, there is. Okay, so I'll open it and start it, and then I will mark this down to 1 full skein. I won't change the partial skein because the full skein will become a partial skein. If I finish 9:17, I don't have a full skein left, so this would become 0, and I'd record that I don't have any. And then if it's something that I need for a project, I'd put it in the to buy column. And that's me. That's how I manage my stitching inventory. I hope that was clear. If I have time this afternoon, I'll put in a wee slideshow at the end of the charts that I've kitted up that I'm super excited about. If you have any questions about any of this, please feel free to shoot me a message down below. And if you would like trying to use the DMC inventory tool that I use, let me know and I would be very happy to email it to you. I'll put my email address down below. Please note that I'm going to be traveling from this Thursday, so I won't have very much time online. When I'm traveling, I tend to be out from sunrise to sunset and sometimes beyond then. And I have stitching that I really want to do while I'm there, so I'm not going to be checking my phone a lot. It will take me a little bit longer to get it to you than I would have liked, but I'll be very pleased to send it to you when I can if you're interested in that. And the easiest way is to email me directly, or if you prefer, you can send me a private message on Instagram where I'm the Travelling Stitcher with your email address, and I'll get it away to you. That's all from me. I hope you enjoyed the video. Please consider subscribing, and thank you very much for being here. Ka kite anō. Bye.